It is human nature to want what you don't have. For example, some of my friends have curly hair, so they use a hot iron to straighten it. Others, who have straight hair, go to great effort to make it curly. As you know by now, Tom doesn't have that problem. But he knows how easy it is for pastors to fall into that same trap, to think that what you don't have is better than what you do. We look at the mega church down the street and wonder why they are successful and our church isn't. Or we will compare our speaking ability to the gifted people we hear at conferences and wonder how God can even use our average communication skills. In this chapter, we are going to learn why you don't have to be a mega gifted pastor or have a mega-sized budget to have an impactful ministry. In fact, those of you who pastor a small or medium-sized church are just as poised to make a significant kingdom impact if you can communicate a good enough reason for assembling a church family together each weekend. In the next few challenges, you will learn in detail what we call the Oikos Challenge, a simple and practical way to get your church family focused on their Oikos. In this chapter, the laser focus of the Oikos Challenge.
If you're the pastor of a small church, you may be in better shape than many large church pastors. Actually, the smaller your church, the more likely you are to ask the right questions about your ministry. People seldom ask the right questions when they're comfortable, and it's easy to get comfortable when your worship center doesn't have many empty seats. But getting more people to church is not the same as reaching more people for Christ. Filling a local church was never the objective we were commissioned to meet. To my knowledge, Jesus never said, make sure you platform the most gifted pastor you can so you can have the most respected, best attended church in town. I mean, let's be honest, the fastest way to grow your church is to simply resign your position and have your church board hire a better preacher. You might think I'm kidding, but I'm not. And this is why. Most of the churches in your community are competing for the same audience. People who are looking for a better preacher. Christians who are just looking to be well-fed or to find a good church home where they can have their spiritual needs met. Remember what I said in the last section. You can't solve a problem until you understand the problem. And the problem is this. Lost people need to find Jesus more than your church needs to fill seats. We don't have to indulge our dark side for very long before our competitive nature takes over and our primary goal becomes to simply have the most popular church in the community. And if that's what we're after, then we need preachers with mega gifts and worship leaders with record deals. And I know there's nothing wrong with one or both of those, but what about the rest of us who probably aren't ever going to have either of the two? A friend of mine actually had a representative from a megachurch in his community stop by to ask if he would consider transitioning his church into another site for the regional megachurch he was representing. When my friend asked the rep why he thought that would be a good idea, the representative said, "Because my pastor is anointed." Those were his exact words. And people wonder why there's such a spirit of suspicion and competition, non-cooperation among local church pastors. You do have an enemy, but it's not the pastor down the street. The truth is, you both have an enemy who happens to be the same enemy. And the sooner you and all the other pastors in your community stop worrying about each other, the sooner you can work together to fight the one who's trying to destroy all of us. And all of that leads to the why of your church, not just the what of your church or the how of your church, but the why of your church. Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why, explains what he calls the golden circle. So picture 3 concentric circles. The inside circle contains the why, the middle circle contains the how, and the outside circle contains the what. Sinek's contention is that most organizations work from the outside inward. They focus on the what and how, but seldom clarify or even define the why. He makes the case for starting with the why, which motivates employees and customers at a level the what and how never could. Now, fast forward to your next leadership conference. Why will you attend? Probably for the same reason you attended the last one, to find what it will take to be a better leader and how to grow your church. After all, you already know the why, right? But understanding the why is not the same as embracing the why. And a laser-focused church allows the why to manage every conversation about the what and the how. People will attend your church if you give them a good enough reason, even if you're an averagely gifted pastor leading an averagely resourced church. People will generally do anything if they have a good reason, but they need a better why to attend church than to simply hear you preach or listen to your worship team play music, because there are probably better teachers and worship teams within driving distance of the people you're trying to reach. If being spiritually fed is your why, your church family might as well go to a better restaurant. I know I would. People also need a better reason to attend church than to simply do the right thing. That might have worked a couple of generations ago, but it won't work anymore. When I was a kid, going to church was the right thing to do. But in the pluralistic world of postmodernism, the pervading perception is that there's no right and wrong, just rightly different. And people need a better reason to attend church than to simply keep it going. Some older congregations want young people to attend their church because they want it to survive another generation. They don't want it to die on their watch. But that's simply not a good enough why to compel anyone to come to church just to see if we can help it survive. Actually, few pastors have presented a clear and compelling reason why people should attend their church. Jesus knew the necessity of the why. Some of the better-known disciples came out of the fishing industry, and when Jesus called them, they were given a choice. They knew they could keep fishing for fish, or they could follow Jesus and change the world. The text tells us that they immediately dropped their nets and followed him. And the reason is simple. Jesus gave them a compelling reason to follow him, a why they couldn't refuse. People still want to hear that kind of challenge, especially young people. It seems like some churches just don't want to give it to them. We're too comfortable. We're satisfied to listen to an interesting sermon and the music we enjoy and then go out and have lunch with our friends. But the church has never existed for us. The church isn't for believers. The ecclesia is believers. So let me ask you, what is the purpose of your church? I asked a pastor friend of mine that question, and he said something like inward, upward, and outward. That is to grow spiritually, to worship God, and to witness to others. I told him that would never work in my world. And when he asked me why, I told him, because you can't give people options. Given those three options, what will people always default to? The inward, wanting to have their spiritual needs met. If you're lucky, you might get them to occasionally look upward, but they'll never get around to the outward, and it won't bother them, because they can mostly fulfill the purpose of their church with only going inward and upward. Yet neither of those are even the purpose of the church. In the book 8 to 15, The World is Smaller Than You Think, I identified a few reasons that many church leaders have proposed for going to church: worship, fellowship, knowledge, and correction. And while all four of those might help frame the process of your church, the what and the how, none of them frame the purpose for your church, the why. Because your church family will be better at all of them after they croak, also known as die. The best worship they'll ever enjoy is in heaven. The best fellowship they'll ever enjoy is in heaven. The most knowledge about God they'll ever have will be in heaven, and none of them will ever have to be corrected in heaven. If those are the whys for your church, then your church is evidently better off dead than alive. For 2,000 years, the church has existed for only one reason, and that's to change the world. And if you believe your job is to witness to everyone, then you won't witness to anyone. It's simply too daunting a task. That's why Jesus didn't ask you to change the world. He only asked you to change yours.